Stretching 1,200 kilometers across 8 European countries, the Alps form a massive, crescent-shaped geographic feature through the center of the continent. This entire mountain range is the active result of a slow-motion crash. The African and Eurasian tectonic plates are colliding, and the extreme pressure is forcing the bedrock between them to buckle and fold upward. If you climb to the highest altitudes of these peaks, you are standing on ancient seabed. The rock forming these summits was originally the floor of the Tethys Ocean. As the continents crushed together over tens of millions of years, those flat marine sedimentary rocks folded over themselves. They formed massive overlapping thrusts called nappies, stacking the ocean floor miles into the sky. The Alps are an active crumple zone. The African plate is still pushing northward today, meaning this geological collision is happening right now beneath the surface. Between those towering summits lie deep geographical trenches. The valleys drop sharply from the peaks, creating a severe, heavily fractured landscape. For centuries, these high ridges and steep drops acted as physical walls. Human communities settling in one valley were completely cut off from the people living just a few miles away in the next. Because of that geographical isolation, distinct identities developed in extremely close proximity. Today, you can hike for a few days and cross through areas speaking German, French, Italian, Romansh, and Ladine, each with their own hyper-local dialects. These isolated populations faced a harsh reality. Flat, arable land is almost non-existent here. To survive, they had to figure out how to farm on steep vertical terrain with extremely short growing seasons. Alpine human culture, from the architecture to the food, developed as a direct response to the necessity of pushing upward to secure usable land and resources. Below 2,000 meters in the montane and subalpine zones, the natural state of the Alps is dense woodland. Without human intervention, this entire lower elevation would be thick with deciduous and coniferous forests. To feed livestock without clearing narrow valley floors, farmers developed a system called Alpine transhumance. They drive their herds from the harsh winter valleys up to the high pastures every summer and back down in the fall. This migration is still practiced today. During the Almuptrieb, marking the end of the summer grazing season, herders guide cows decorated with heavy bells and floral crowns through the mountain villages. This agricultural practice actually gave the mountain range its name. The word Alp does not refer to a snowy peak. It specifically refers to these high-elevation summer pastures where the livestock graze. The iconic rolling green meadows associated with the lower Alps are entirely man-made. They are an engineered ecosystem that would quickly revert to dense forest if the seasonal cattle drive stopped. Above the tree line lies the Alpine zone. The climate here is hostile, yet it supports a rich phytology, with over 13,000 plant species and specialized animals like marmots and golden eagles thriving in the cold. Today, the greatest threat to these species is human infrastructure. Dense settlements, roads, and railways in the valleys physically slice the habitats apart, trapping animals and blocking migration routes. This map shows barriers for alpine carnivores. Thick red and orange areas represent macro barriers, like highways severing green protected zones. To survive, animals must move. Blue dotted lines identify crucial ecological corridors, physical stepping stones allowing wildlife to navigate around our concrete walls. Biological survival at these heights relies entirely on how well humans engineer physical connections across our own infrastructure. Pushing past 4,000 meters into the neval and glacial zones, the landscape turns to sheer granite and permanent ice. This is the domain of massive, imposing structures like Mont Blanc and the Matterhorn. For decades, these high peaks were considered unclimbable. In 1865, British mountaineer Edward Wimber led the first successful ascent of the Matterhorn, a triumph that ended in tragedy when 4 of his team members fell to their deaths on the descent. The Matterhorn dominates the skyline because it stands alone. Millions of years of glacial erosion carved away the surrounding rock, leaving an isolated pyramid with 4 impossibly steep faces. The sheer altitude of these massifs physically blocks weather systems moving across the continent. As warm, moist air is forced up and over the mountains, it expands, cools, and drops its precipitation. The Alps act as a colossal atmospheric wall, permanently dividing Europe into a wet north and a dry south. The true architects of this vertical world are the glaciers. For millennia, These slow-moving rivers of ice acted as massive engines of erosion, carving out the deep U-shaped valleys and grinding down the jagged peaks. The historical mass of these ice sheets was staggering. The Mer de Glace, the longest glacier in France, once filled this entire valley with a thick, seemingly permanent layer of dense ice. Rising global temperatures are stripping that ice away. The glaciers across the Alps are shrinking rapidly, retreating up the mountainsides and exposing the bare, scarred bedrock that has been buried since the last ice age. This loss reaches far beyond the mountain peaks. Those glaciers act as Europe's water tower. As they disappear, the steady release of fresh water that sustains downstream rivers, agriculture, and ecological services throughout the continent dries up. The Alps are a deeply interconnected system where geology, native biology, and human culture rely on a delicate vertical balance. Now, the frozen foundation of that entire world is melting away.